Hello guys, my name is John. This is my 2009 Mark V GTI, and it's about to get a big turbo. So I've had this car for over 3 years, and it's got 104,000 miles on it. A couple nice things about the later Mark Vs, 08.5 to 09, is they have the TSI engine that's also found in the Mark VI. There's a couple really nice updates to that, which are updated high pressure fuel pump, slightly thicker connecting rods. So it's a really great engine to do something like this too. So there's a couple reasons I'm doing this. Firstly, I just want it to go faster. But secondly, there's a couple things I want to check out. It's on a Unitronic Stage 2 tune, so I want to check out the OEM turbocharger and see if there's any shaft play or if the oil seal is leaking around the compressor wheel. So the turbo I'm going to be going with, a whole set HY35. I have a cast equal length SPA manifold that I'm going to be testing out on this car, and that's what's going to be in the first episode, removing the original turbo and seeing how this is going to mount up and what kind of modifications I'm going to have to make. So what I'm going to be showing you in this first episode is how to remove the OEM turbocharger on a TSI engine, and also how to remove the intercooler piping to prepare for a front mount intercooler. I'll list all the modifications to the car in the description below. It's really not a very drastic list, and I don't want to waste your guys' time, so I just want to get straight into this. Alright guys, so I'm going to start by removing the intake here. There is a bolt back here, a couple hose clamps, bolt on the heat shield right there, and a hose clamp down here. Alright, got that out. Now for the next two. Alright, so here's the backside of the heat shield. There are those triple square bolts right there on either side, and then that hex plug right there. It's a little hard to get to. It was kind of a struggle, but with a couple different socket extensions, you should be able to get to it just fine. Alright, so what I'm going to do next actually is remove the axle. What I'll have to do is remove this 12-point bolt right here. There are 3 bolts holding the control arm in under there, and then there's 6 bolts holding the axle to the transmission in there. When you do this, make sure you mark the orientation of the axle when you remove it. I'll show you that when I get under the car. Okay, so the axle shield is out and the axle bolt. What I did to get it out, since I forgot to take the bolt out before putting the car up, what you can do is you can have somebody hold the brake while you take it out, or what ended up working for me is I have these longer lug bolts because I have wheel spacers on the front, and the bolt was long enough to stop on the ear that holds the brake caliper. So that worked out perfectly. It just held the brake rotor and hub assembly in place while I spun this out. And then to get the axle the rest of the way out, you take these 3 16mm bolts off of the ball joint and push the control arm down. You can then pull the strut assembly outward. That allows you to push the axle this way. And I removed it by dropping it down under here, pulling it out between the sway bar and the frame rail. So here we are at the top of the stock turbo. I'm going to remove the downpipe next. There's 4 nuts on these studs here that bolt to the turbo flange, and then there is a stainless clamp down there that holds the first section of the downpipe to the cat. So I'm going to get that out of the way, show you this next. So as you can see, the drive axle is out of the way. It would have been a problem, I believe, which is why I took it out. So you can see here I have the downpipe hanging. I don't think I'm going to remove it right now. I believe I'll be able to get the turbo out with it still in there. With the situation that I have with the rest of the downpipe, everything's kind of frozen on there, and I'd rather not remove it unless I have to. Plus, it'll be good to see where exactly the downpipe is going to sit in relation to the new turbo, and what exactly I'm going to have to do to modify it in order to get the old downpipe to fit onto the new turbo. I disconnected the turbo oil drain, which is from here, bottom of the turbo, to the block here. I taped off both the feed and the drain. So on the TSI, the feed is actually below the drain. In order to remove the feed, you're going to have to take off this bolt right here, right next to the diverter valve. There's a hook-like feature right here that also traps the feed, keeps it hanging right there. There is one smaller triple square bolt right here, and then there's a triple square banjo bolt on the top of the turbo in order to disconnect the oil feed. The oil drain is a lot simpler. There's two triple square bolts that hold the drain flange onto the turbo, and it's the same situation down here that hold it onto the block. So you just remove all four of those and it comes straight out. So the next things that I'm going to have to do are disconnect the turbo outlet pipe right here. I actually have a turbo muffler delete on it right now. So on a standard car it will not look exactly like this. So disconnect the hose clamp up here, down here to disconnect the pancake pipe. Disconnect the turbo brace right here. There's two bolts down here, and there's one bolt right here with a nut on this side connecting it to the turbocharger. I'm also going to have to disconnect the coolant feed and coolant drain. This right here is the coolant drain. There is a triple square banjo bolt up here, and a triple square banjo bolt up there connected to the block. That one's a little bit harder to get to. I might have to actually move the turbo out of the way before I can get to that. And then what I'm also going to have to do is remove the belly pan as well as the fender liner in order to get to the intercooler pipe up here to disconnect it. So we're under the car here, and the turbo is actually removed because it's easier for me to show you this way. There's 5 studs up there. You can get those off from the top of the engine, from up there. And then it helps to loosen these lower studs too, so that these wedge blocks are a little bit loose, so you can wiggle the manifold out. Next thing to do, of course, is to test fit the manifold and test fit the turbo, or to see how it lines up. So I'm pretty excited that this fits. You can see how close it is over there to the heat shield. But the reason why I chose this manifold, I had kind of a hunch looking at it in the photos. I don't know if you can see, but the T3 flange is actually tilted kind of inward, so it tips the compressor housing closer to the block over here. And it worked out really nicely, because if it weren't for the flange being tipped in a little bit, that this would be hitting the firewall. And I know that with some log style manifolds that people go with, there's issues with too big of a turbo hitting the firewall. Okay, so that's it for the first episode. In the next episodes, I've got something pretty exciting planned. Actually, I'm not going to be using the whole set turbo. I'm going to be going with something different. So my friend that's going a different direction with his turbo build on his car, he's selling me his old turbo. So it's brand new. It's never been used. And it's a really sweet turbo. I'll go over the details in the next episode. I'm really excited to show you guys. This is going to be a really big step forward for the build. Yeah. Other things that are going to come up in the next episode are removing the intercooler and then fitting the new intercooler. I have a Treadstone TR8 intercooler that's going to go on this car. It's a front mount, and Yeah. And coming up in the next episode is also some powder coating. That's going to be really cool. I'm going to be powder coating the compressor housing of the new turbo, and then I'm going to do the whole set just for practice. So that's going to be pretty sweet. So stay tuned for that as well. I really appreciate you guys watching. This is my first YouTube video series. This is the first car on the channel. There's going to be more cars on the channel. We've got some really sweet stuff planned for this channel. Stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.